Hey, I'm Dave. Welcome to Shop Talk. I'm joined by my co-host Glenn. How are you, Glenn?
Pretty good, other than little
Yeah,
addition
what
to the
happened to your
forehead.
head?
Well, I figure on Dave's Garage, you're in it for the subs and likes, so I'm in it for the scabs and likes. So
Ah,
no,
I
I
see.
I have a horrible time hitting my head on stuff. Usually cars. I've hit it on the back of my Audi wagon about 4 times, and I got a new car from my mom the other day. Had a rattle in the trunk, opened it up, and I whacked it 3 times. So.
Didn't learn the first two times?
It's almost a running joke now. That yeah means I've been doing work on a car if my head's got a scar on it. So
Yeah, the worst car I ever had for that was a 63 Imperial. And on the hood, it had the hook came down from the hood and then was sharpened to a point so they could go into the receiver on the fire or on the radiator side. And so, yeah, if you ever stood up underneath it, you always brained yourself in the back of the head with that spike. And by the late 60s, they'd figured out to put the spike on the bottom and the receiver on the top, so you didn't do that. But
yeah, yeah, I'm not the only person. I'm just getting really good at it. Yeah.
so what do we got for questions? It looks like there was quite a stack, so we might as well get right to them.
Yeah, we got a couple of episodes too. So I pulled some from the last three that we've done. So I think the big one or the most common one here, I think, is running on that running your own ChatGPT. That seemed to have a lot of good hot ones. So I've got a few stacked up from there. So
All right.
let me jump in here. So Leo AI 75. Hi Dave, value your work, but don't see the point of this tutorial or video when the kit you're using is so out of reach to everyone. Wouldn't it have been better to use a typical games machine? $20 open AI subscription goes a long way to get a $50,000 setup.
Yeah, no, granted, you're not going to save enough to pay for a machine like that, but then I was pretty clear that it will run on pretty much anything. It will just run better hardware, so why not demo it on the best hardware I had access to? I didn't think it would make sense to run it on a laptop and then say, and it would be even faster than a machine. But point taken, I actually ran a bunch of tests today. I ran it on a Raspberry Pi and I ran it on my MacBook and a couple of things like that. So it surprisingly worked in all those cases. Speed was not what you want, but at least not on the Pi. But that's something I'm going to do a future episode, Cheap GPT or something like that, where I'll show how it works and runs on really pedestrian hardware, and we'll see how it actually performs.
Yeah. So the next question sort of follows up, and you kind of answer that from at random Torque. What would be the minimum system specs for running this? And maybe again, you've tested a bunch of stuff. Minimum or sort of minimum reasonable, or what sort of an average system, and how do you think it would fare on that?
On the Pi, that machine or the Pi board itself has 8 gigabytes, and it might even run on 4. I'm not sure if the model is small enough to fit in, but it was so CPU constrained with just the 4 little cores that you wouldn't want to go much smaller or slower than that, I don't think. Yeah, in fact, running it on a Pi turns out to be not real time
Right,
practical.
right. Any idea? I mean, I don't know. What's your average user? What's the average computer person sort of got for a setup these days?
I was sitting on my MacBook at the time, so I ran it on my
Yeah.
MacBook, and it uses the GPU on the MacBook, and it cranks really quickly. So
Wow. Yeah.
any kind of it's a couple of years old. It's an M1, not an M3 or anything fancy like that. None of the new ones or newer ones. Does have a lot of memory, and at the time it was pretty much top spec laptop, but now it's a couple of years old laptop, and it did it really well. So.
So then the only other factor is just the storage capacity, as to whether you're using the 8 billion or the 70 billion, or the
Yeah,
two
you're
hundred
gonna have a
billion
lot of.
source.
If you're gonna load it into your GPU, you need to have a lot of video RAM.
Yeah.
So that's why one of the reasons I was trying the 96 gigabyte setup so that I could load a 70 billion parameter model into it. You're not going to do that in the Pi. So
Another one following with that at Guru Meditation 6424. And this setup is using two A6000s out of the box. Did I miss something?
no, it's actually 6,000 ADAs. I don't know. It's
6000
so
ADAs.
confusing.
Okay.
There's A6000 is a much cheaper card, and then the 6,000 ADA are the ones that run about 15K a piece. And this machine has 2 of them. And no, I don't think you misheard. That's what it's got.
At lapis.lazuli. Dave, gone in a really roundabout way to run Olama without much explanation. For 99.99% of it, you just install Olama directly into Windows without going through WSL. WSL is good for some things rather than others, but why spending 30 minutes setting up WSL to run when Olama can be installed in 30 seconds?
Well, sort of an ulterior motive is I think people should have WSL. So I was thinking about doing an episode on how to install WSL and use it and run it, and I probably will still do that because I was surprised how many people were new to WSL. It seems to me like if you're running Windows, you would just use it now and then for the things it's good for, and I recommend that you do. But point taken, you can just install Llama on Windows. I was just much more familiar with it, so I thought I would do it in the environment that I'm used to using it in. And then that environment also scales to many different things, obviously down to the Pi, up to the Super Threadripper. So
So
that's a little
that's
harder to do with Windows. But
right. That's the advantage. And then at SmetEd Anarchist, but Olama is available as a native Windows program. What is the benefit of running in a Linux Docker container?
I don't know if you can run it in a Docker container. I don't know enough about GPU support within Docker. Whether you would have to set the GPU and CUDA drivers and everything up inside your
Okay.
container before you ran it. So I can't speak to that container part of it specifically. But what was the rest of the question?
Well,
Now I
you were
lost myself
using,
from the Docker
so, yeah,
container.
so he said Olama, it says, but Olama is available as a native Windows program. So what's the benefit of running it in that Linux Docker? But you were using Docker for part of your application as well, right?
Yeah, the UI is launched as a Docker
Oh,
container
okay, okay,
because it's just
okay,
doing web serving and stuff. It
okay.
doesn't have to do anything incredibly
Yeah,
fancy.
yeah. And then we got a couple questions here, sort of related to sort of power consumption. At Michael Mancuso, any idea on how much power the machine was consuming? And then at Jesus Freak PL says, what's the easiest way to estimate actual power costs of running it locally? So do you know what sort of power usage you're talking? And
Yeah, I think the highest I saw was 950 watts, which is
okay,
pretty high. That's with the CPU pretty much fully engaged, I imagine, and then both GPUs running. It may also be, I don't think it's browning out at that point. I would assume that they're shipping this machine with the dual 6008 is that it's got the power supply for it. That's one thing nice, about Dell workstations and that is that they're built really well.
right,
And I just have the confidence that it's set up to run the way they shipped it.
right, right.
The best and easiest way to monitor power and the actual cost is to get a kilowatt, I think, which is the little box that plugs into the wall, and then you plug your load into the box, and it's got a little digital display. And you can even set your power price in there, I think. So I think I
Oh,
pay
okay.
something like 13 cents per kilowatt hour, and it will keep
Yeah.
track of how many kilowatt hours and how many dollars that thing has spent. So I got 3 or 4 of them actually because they're really handy to have.
Well, I was to say that's similar to that little piece that when we were hooking up the PDP-11 that you plugged in just to see what it was drawing. Although that doesn't have a counter to it nor a timer
No, that
element
was
to
one of
it,
the
but
kilowatts actually.
oh, it was okay, yeah.
Yeah.
But so that will actually log time as well, or you said
I don't
you
know
have
if it
to
logs
monitor
time, but
stuff.
it'll
Okay.
log the use of power over time.
Oh, okay. Oh, wow.
So
I thought it was just a simple live readout, but
no, it's got like a set of buttons so you can
oh, okay.
do watts, amps, volts, kilowatt hours, the power factor. I think you can
Wow.
check things like that.
Excellent. Excellent. Um, at Radical Rick 9587, Dave, darn it! You should have mentioned that the password blinker does not move or show anything. I thought it didn't work, so I was trying a bunch of different things, trying to get it to move or show something. So I have no idea what I entered as a password. Any remedy? Since I can't install anything now on the WSL because I don't know the password I typed in.
The secret is WSL dash dash uninstall, I think, or remove. I would
Okay.
remove WSL or at least remove that distribution. If you've got other distributions, you can keep them, but nuke that one distribution and you'll have to start over. I don't know of a way to recover the password if you don't know what it was from the beginning. So
So there's two options. One's an install, one's a remove.
yeah, you could take WSL itself off and put
Okay.
it back on, and I think your distro would go away. And most people only have a single distro, or you could just remove that distribution of
Okay.
Linux and then recreate it.
And then a couple just curious sort of follow-ups on the Chat GPT stuff, especially running your own. At Joy Unleashed says, before I do, will it still gaslight me like the centralized GPT?
I don't think it gaslights you. I think that's your fault.
Garbage in, garbage out? Yeah, it depends what you're feeding it, right?
This one seems even a little. Well, I'm using Llama 3.1, and it's probably
Okay,
more conversational and less formal than ChatGPT, if anything. So
okay.
that's about all I can say to that one.
And then at Jeff Edwards 189, does anyone else say please and thank you to Chat GPT? I just can't help it. He must be Canadian. No, no.
Yeah, I'm pretty polite to it. I thank it when it does a good job, and Part of that is superstitious, I guess. Part of it is I want to maintain a good relationship with the model because it does build history about you. And who knows, if it finds you argumentative and unwilling to accept revision or suggestion, then maybe it will stop suggesting things. I don't know. So, I mean, I'm not going to simp for ChatGPT, but I am going to be nice to it. So,
It doesn't hurt to be polite, eh? Okay, let's move on to when software can kill you or almost kills you. That Jeff Poole 7476, David, he has a question. I've looked at coding technique standards off and on over the years. From my perspective, the most stringent coding standards are still those that are in use by NASA. Why isn't there a consensus in the industry for using something along those lines, especially as more and more complex systems are coming online with failure not an option?
because the general public cannot afford software written to those criticality standards. It takes NASA $1 billion to write the software to spin the back motor on a rover, or some large amount to do some small task, because of the way the software is built. And you can adopt many of those principles. And I like to think the task manager is super reliable for having implemented a lot of good strategies to make sure that there aren't bugs in that code. And I'm not going to say it's never crashed, but I've never seen it crash. So, and it's not ready for space flight, or anything like that because it hasn't been vetted in that way. It wasn't designed in that way. And so you could implement all those things and all the guidelines and all the test procedures that NASA recommends, but you would not be able to produce viable software or commercially viable software, I don't think, unless you were, building software for rockets where the loss was measured in hundreds of millions of dollars per incident or something like that.
Yeah, so I guess sort of this comes along the point too of more and more complex systems depends how you define complex and what's complex to you and what one person sees as important or integral, and their pursuit
Yeah, I
of
mean,
perfection in
certainly.
light of the good, right?
And I'm a big fan of stringent software testing. They've changed it in the days since I left Microsoft. We used to have testers and test engineers assigned to us who would write tests to probe our code and try to break it, not just to confirm that it worked. Those are two different things. And I think a good example of what happens when you don't is the CrowdStrike outage, and that's more than a rocket. That was a lot of money involved there, and it was kernel code that they didn't have the procedures or the tests in place to prevent what went wrong from going wrong. And I think it was pretty clear when you're a boot required driver on millions of machines that you don't want that going wrong. So,
Right. Yeah, and they were trying to do it that way in order to not have to resubmit and recertify through Microsoft. So there's that other sort of piece as well, I guess. Eh?
well, I'm not going to guess their motives, but you're right in that they
Yeah.
were able to do updates that weren't signed to be processed by a piece that was signed. And so, in that sense, they were running unsigned channel files, but, or not unsigned, but because they're probably still signed, but they're not vetted through HQL hardware quality labs the same way. So, if at all.
They, they found a different way and thought it would work. Yeah. And had they tested it right, it would have worked. Or done it right. So it sort of circles around a bit. At Hugh PT 7739, how about the Boeing 737 MAX MCAS software that resulted in hundreds of deaths? Good.
Yeah, that's an interesting case. I don't know enough about it to really give you an intelligent
Right.
comment on it. I understand that it was designed to make the plane perform like it was a 737 regular in the hands of pilots who were only accustomed to that, and so they didn't have to retrain. But then it gets really complicated in terms of how it would detect stalls and allow or disallow you from pulling up and so on and so forth, or force you to dive. It's something I want to know more about, so it might be something worth doing an episode on. But I'll have to learn a lot more about it first.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. That's okay. You're always up for some new learning. So
yeah,
we're happy to hand over, or I'm happy to hand over assignments on behalf of your your audience. So I'll make sure you write that one on the list. Uh, Mark Fruchtman 9473. Boy, everyone's got a lot of numbers on the back of their name. I feel like I got to add 4 to mine now. Um, uh, Hello, Dave. This is a really important story and one that I think is critical. I would like to present your video to students in the classroom, edited for time. I was wondering how to get your permission, or if I could get your permission.
sure. Normally, you don't have to get permission unless you're going to modify the video, I guess. In which case, he's talking about shortening it. So
Yeah.
in this particular case, yes, you personally have permission to do that. It doesn't bother me. Um, yeah, no problem
Even
there.
if he wants to
So
shorten it?
yeah, switch it
Yeah.
around, put the good
Yeah.
parts first.
That's all good parts, Dave.
A film by Romeo Valentine, or whatever the hell his name is.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Move it around. No artistic license, eh? Um, at John Schlichting 8904, I'm wondering if you have any comment regarding the prices realized from the auction of the Paul Allen collection a couple of weeks back. And you had done a piece on that actually a couple of them. I know he says he was floored by what when he saw what the Apple Lisa Twiggy sold for, as well as the price of the Byte magazine collection. And then he throws in a thanks and really enjoying the channel. But yeah, you and I had a really brief chat about that. But some
Yeah, some of the prizes were astronomical, like the Altair going for $56,000 when I think I paid like $1,200 for my Altair. And that was 5 years ago or 4 years ago, and it wasn't working, and I fixed it up. But maybe now it's worth three or something, or maybe five on a good day. There's no way an Altair is worth 56 in my mind. And it's not like that was Paul Allen's Altair that he and Bill
right.
used back in the day. It's one like it, but it's not that one. So it certainly was owned by Paul Allen, so it's got that provenance. I'm surprised that was enough for an extra $50,000 bump. It could be that somebody just liked it and viewed it as a donation to the charity that the auction is backing too. So
Yeah, that's a good point. I was going to say when I flipped through, I think, I don't know, 30, 40, 50 items, I think I only noticed two that didn't exceed the maximum expected
yeah,
bid,
and I was
which,
bidding on a number of things too, which I of course lost on every one of them. But
right. So there was a charitable component to this, I guess. The
that's my
proceeds from it?
understanding.
Okay. Okay. That hopefully
I don't
that's
know
what
what
the
charity.
influence was. Yeah.
Probably his
Yeah.
family charity that then disperses money through its
And again, I
whatever.
don't think you have any answer to this, but who's buying these things? I mean, are there dozens of other, you know, I mean, I was going to say guys like Dave, but you're not exactly the guy scooping up all these things either. You've got a niche interest in some stuff, but some of the stuff was pretty serious cash that these pieces were going for. And will we ever know where they went, or that's up to the people who bought them to sort of
I guess
disclose
that's
if
up to
they've
the
acquired?
buyer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, there's some neat pieces that went for a lot of cash and are somewhere now.
And in fact, I've seen auctions where the provenance says seller undisclosed. I don't know if that's like an agreement that they have not to disclose your name to
Yeah.
or the buyer can't either. I'm not sure how that works, but
Now we're getting into some shop talk. Oh, that was from shop talk too. So our last shop talk here, the core questions to what drive this weekly episode here. That Rudy's retro and tell. What was the hardest vintage repair that you've worked on, other than your truck?
well, there's two that I couldn't solve. So one was the Kim one had been overvolted, and I went through the memory board, which I fixed everything. I got it working, except it would, when you read from memory, it would come back kind of random. And long story short, there's two banks of 2K of memory each, and it toggles between them depending on the address. But the address decode selection was for some reason doing the chip enable for both banks, which doesn't work. And you think, well, you just trace it back to where it happens. But it was incredibly weird, and I never did solve it. So I sent it off to a guy, Jonathan Chapman at Glitchworks. And he's like my Superman for fixing stuff, because when either I have damaged it so badly or I buy it and it's doesn't work when I get it, he's pretty much magical in being able to fix everything. He's not cheap. He does some hobbyist work, but if you want his best work, you pay the professional rates, as you should. The problem with that is somebody will come by with a Commodore 64 and go, "Hey, I got this for $180. Can you fix it for 30?" Well, no, probably not. It depends on what's wrong with it, right? So just because it's old and cheap doesn't make the labor that goes into fixing them cheap by any stretch. But sometimes it's worth it, especially when you've got rare hardware. He's got my RK11 controller out of my PDP-1134 right now. And my favorite part is I wrote this email and I'm explaining, because I thought he was doing mostly 8-bit stuff or microcomputer stuff.
Another
So I'm
gray bearded
explaining,
wizard. Yeah.
yeah. So I'm explaining what the RK11 is and how he might bench test it without a PDP and all this stuff. And then I get the email back, "Oh, no, I'll just try it in my own PDP-1134, and I'll try your controller with my drives too." So that's always a nice luxury.
Now you said there was two vintage problems that you had, or the two.
Yeah. What is the other
So
one?
the Kim one was one.
Oh, yeah, probably the M7589 card out of the PDP-1134.
Okay.
That failed, and they are very rare, and they've got an Intel 8008. So the 4004 was the very first CPU, and I think the 8008 was its successor. and that's the chip, and it's a gold chip with the gold legs and the gold cover and everything on there. So kind of like that board to work again, because there aren't very many of them. There's only one per PDP 1134 probably. So he's got mine. I have a spare, so I'm up and running, but it was an ugly failure. So they were sizzling.
Yeah, magic smoke. Now you mentioned and I can't remember his name at Glitchworks there, um, but
Jonathan,
we,
yeah.
Jonathan, yeah, we were talking. I can't remember. It's just last week, and I don't know if it was something that you had sent off to him or someone else, and you sort of using them as your expert, and they said, oh, they had to send it off to their expert. So
Oh yeah, I've got a super pet. That was
there's
actually the other
levels,
repair.
right? Yeah,
I bought two super pets in pretty rough condition, and I was able to make one nice body and repaint and do the chassis and sandblast all the rust out of it and everything else, and got it really nice. And I got the 8032 side? I got it working with a Romulator, which replaces the system RAM. But I was again having decode issues with RAM banks. It's funny, it's actually kind of a similar problem. And so I sent it to a guy named Chuck who does a bunch of pet stuff, and he's fixed a couple other pet things for me quite nicely. And he got the 8032 all working as I understand it, but there's also a 6809 daughter board so that you can boot it into Waterloo Basic or Super Fortran or whatever they ship with that. And that board is not working. And I'd like that to work because it's got a real serial port, a DB25, so then I could use the Super Pet as an actual decent terminal to something.
yeah.
So he ran out of, he's had it for several months, and I'm not rushing him because he's certainly not working on my timetable. I'm happy that he looked at it at all, but he's going to send it to his guy, basically, the guy that is a specialist in super pets, it sounds like.
Yeah. So your guy has a guy.
Yeah.
Which is it's like inception of vintage computer work here. Um, let's what do we got at Michael Flood 5951. First of all, thanks for all that you do. Very informative. He'd appreciate your views on passkeys. Are they the future? Should we get involved or should we avoid? And he triple question marked that bad boy. So.
Well, I can only tell you what I've done, and that is I have been using them because I really enjoy the experience on Apple where you can just get into something like GitHub or anything else that accepts a passkey with your fingerprint. And I find that really handy, or Face ID. And probably if you have Windows Hello, I don't know if it's that well integrated. You still probably have to confirm it because it doesn't want to just be like you're there, so you agree. Well, like Face ID also confirms, I imagine, if it has to. Yeah, so I'm trusting them. I'm doing it with Apple, so I have a fair bit of faith in Apple's privacy standards as opposed to, say, a Google or a Microsoft. But I'm sure that when it comes to passkeys, they're all equally safe.
Now, I just updated to iOS 18, is it? On the iPhone? And maybe it was there before, but there's now a password application. Is that new or did I just notice it?
I don't know. I'm only on 17, I think, or 16.
Okay. What's the latest one, man? I thought we all just
It's 18. We might have got an
18,
upgrade,
okay.
but
Yeah.
I don't think my phone's
So
taken the
I don't
update
know.
yet.
Maybe I'll have to look, but I was just like all of a sudden this password thing appeared on there, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's kind of curious. So, well, there's another assignment for you. Check into that. Get back.
I'll get right on that.
Why did you wink when you said that? Yeah. Or roll your eyes. Hello, Kitty Fan Man. Yeah, Dave, why not monetize via ads here when you already have ads here anyway? I think
Because
that's
this
getting
channel,
to some of that stuff again about, we were talking last time about Patreon and maybe setting up that model and donating it. And then we got this second channel and yeah, things are a little bit squirrely. So everyone's got lots of ideas.
yeah, well, to get monetized on YouTube, I forget what the actual standards are. You need like 1,000 subscribers and then a certain number of views in the last trailing 30 or 90 days. Okay. And this channel does not have enough views yet because we've only really done 2 episodes of content on here yet. So, and there's a small audience because a lot of people aren't subscribed to this channel, which would be a reminder to subscribe to this channel if you're not already.
We'll keep pumping them out. And if people like it, they'll glom onto it and we'll go from there. Spiky Vans 1488. Do you find it strange or difficult to be in a room by yourself, talking to no one but a camera and a microphone?
Not when I'm recording an episode. I do feel a little self-conscious, and I've got an audio curtain that I can pull across here so that I'm not exposed. I feel kind of in my little cove here, and then I can do my recording straight to the camera. And I'm pretty good with that. I don't imagine I'm talking to a person that's sitting here or anything like that. I know a lot of people do that. So it's almost like I'm more recording a podcast while looking at the camera than anything. So I'm speaking to an audience and not an individual, which I guess I have to do in order to, I don't know if that helps with the masking or what, but I guess I just kind of figured that out now that I am envisioning an audience and not a single individual that I'm talking to. So, although when I'm explaining things, I try to explain them as I would to one of my kids, my adult kids, that kind of thing.
So you're not, you might be imagining an audience, but you're not imagining them naked, which I've also heard was some advice that you used to give people, or not you, they used to give public speakers. Oh, imagine the audience and they're naked or something. Wasn't that a piece of advice to try and settle people down or
yeah, I've
something?
heard that one.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Not something
Well,
I
and
do.
it's,
Most of my
no,
audience
and it's,
is male, 55 years old, 35 or 35 to 55 males. So,
I was just thinking again, and we've talked about this, and you've talked about it too, that the whole thing of like talking on the telephone um, is not the preferred method of communication. It's like I can email someone or I can FaceTime, and that visual connection. Uh, and I was not a FaceTime guy until you and I started communicating, but I'm definitely not a telephone guy. Like I don't do that stuff. But then, and this sort of venue again, where you're talking to someone, at least allows that. Like I can't imagine having this conversation without being able to see you, or you to have it without being able to see someone else. You get that extra piece of feedback sort of as you're communicating, and a few extra cues that I know
yeah.
sure makes it easier for me.
Yeah, for me too. And in fact, this episode, I should confess, has been weird because partway through, it reset the monitor and the window popped over to here, and I didn't want to stop. But that's why a couple times I've been looking over there because your face is over here instead of over there. So I've been talking to what looks like a golf course, whatever the default Apple screensaver is, for the last 10 or 15 minutes. But so
So
yeah,
you've been
sometimes it is
stuck
weird.
imagining me. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Just keep my clothes on. Yeah. Focus on the scars, Dave. Just focus on the scars.
I'm looking away.
Couple last yeah, do not. Couple last little sort of casual questions I hear, and I think I'm going to throw in one of my own here. Ryan Paz, Dave, can't help but notice the attention grabbing cans. Oh, your beverages. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
And until you get a beer cozy.
Cozy, probably, yeah.
What are the beverages of choice, or is it always changing?
Sponsored by Bud Light. No, no,
Not
not really.
sponsored by. Yeah.
No, not sponsored by. That's the default low calorie beer that I happen to have because I think your options are like Bud Light, Michelob Ultra, um, generally kind of nasty watery
Yeah.
beers. But I don't want to drink a bunch of heavy beer, so I have some good beer and I drink those on the weekend mostly. And then if I'm going to have a beer during the week, if we're recording or whatever, then I will have a Bud Light. So that's why you see me drinking Bud Light. Sorry, Kid
Um,
Rock.
at Brittany Hears. Hello, Dave. Do you know why the letter V is used for the paste shortcut on Windows compared to the C used for the copy shortcut?
Yes, I do. It's from the Apple Lisa. And if you look at it, it's like function, and then it's Z for undo, X for cut, copy, and paste. So it's C happens to line up with C, and X is kind of like crossing something out. And Z
Okay.
doesn't really evoke undo, I guess, although it's
Yeah.
common now. So yeah, it's just the bottom left four keys, which is why
So that
V is
was
one of them.
an Apple configuration that was adopted
Apple
by
Lisa, I
others.
believe, yeah.
Okay. Wow. Wow. So Steve Jobs himself then, was it? No.
Pro-
He was he there? That was before he left and
yeah, he was pretty
came
involved
back,
with
right? Yeah.
Lisa.
Yeah. That's all I got for those questions. I did have one last week that I wanted to chuck at you. That was sort of timely, and then I forgot, and it's reared its ugly head again.
Oh, but actually, I should say no. But Steve Jobs did not invent that. I know that I can't remember the name of the engineer that did, but it was not Steve Jobs, so or designer or whoever came up with it.
That'll give the listeners something to Google and research on
Yeah.
their own. We can't let you give them all the answers,
Well, that's the
eh?
problem. I can't even check my own stuff here, so I'm coming up with stuff, and then I'm thinking, is that right? I'd like to go and Google it, before I go on.
Yeah.
But so
Or ask your own
humor me.
ChatGPT model. Yeah, I mean that's the other.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know. This is it's just my sort of pet peeve. I've got a brand of printer at home, and it has a wireless connection to it, and it works totally fine. Then I had a friend who needed to print some stuff. I said, "Oh, no problem. I'll just drag my printer over. We can connect it." Well, oh my God, the rigmarole to get that darn thing connected was just wicked. And then I'm at
Really?
home a couple weekends ago and helping my mom set up and transfer to a new computer, and just a nightmare trying to get this printer to connect through the wireless connection and even wired. I'm and I know there's a bunch of stuff going around about the proprietary nature of their printer ink cartridges and all that stuff. Um, what's an alternative sort of escape from that stuff, or simplify that? I mean, direct connection is clearly the way to go, but is it what do you runner for a printer? What's a
I have an
reasonable
HP
alternative for
LaserJet.
folks? Yeah, other than the sort of the cheapest inkjet one you can find at Staples or what have you.
Yeah, we do a fair bit of printing here, so we've always had a decent laser printer, and I had I've had a number of brands over the years, none of which I've been happy with. The old
Okay.
joke about Rage Against the Machine was never specific about what machine they were raging against, but it was probably a printer. So
It
we
was
went
most
with it.
definitely a printer.
Right. So we went with an HP LaserJet Pro, which is like the most vanilla printer you can buy because everything emulates an HP LaserJet Pro, basically. I forget the number, M4776. I can't remember the actual model number, but it's probably changed in the 2 or 3 years since we've had it. But the beautiful thing about it is AirPrint from an iPhone works. You just print and it comes up as an option and you can send it to the printer. And I don't remember doing a lot of work to configure that. I think that works pretty much out of the box once you get the Wi-Fi connected. And the printer is also, it's connected by Wi-Fi and wired. And the only problem I've ever had with it was unable to print to it from my Mac Pro until I wiped it. And it was an issue with the Mac Pro, some configuration issue, and not with the printer, because all the other computers in the house can print to it just fine. And you don't have to install drivers because, again, it's HP LaserJet Pro. So every computer pretty much has a print driver for that built in.
And it's what, 3,000 pages per toner cartridge or something?
Yeah, toner is getting expensive, and it also
Yeah.
emails me all the time. It's my wife's printer, but I don't know why it's got my email in there. Probably I registered it or something or set it up. So it emails me constantly to tell me that cyan toner is low and
Oh, maybe she
magenta
set
toner
that
is
up.
low.
I wouldn't. Don't discourage. Say, oh, email it. Yeah, you can send that crap to Dave. Anyway, that's all I got. So, what else? Anything sort of interesting or curious happened in the last week that you'd sort of like to let folks know about? Something that's not enough for an episode, or curious thing
No,
that
I just
happened?
did an episode on kernel mode versus user mode, and I
Okay,
just uploaded that. So that'll be out in the next couple of days. So watch for
cool.
that on the main channel.
Yeah. And
Other than
any
that,
idea what's coming up in the next little bit?
nope. I
Nope.
live episode to episode. I barely
Excellent.
ever rarely plan two ahead. So
Excellent. Yeah. Yeah, we'll do it live. There we go.
exactly.
Okay.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us, everybody. Have a great night. And next time, we'll see you till then. Thanks. This little chair will be waiting for one of you, and a rocking chair for another who likes to rock, and a big armchair for two to curl up in. All next time on Dave's Garage.